today's talk is about cybersecurity for small to medium-sized businesses. Basically trying to help you understand the things you probably don't know about. So, because oftentimes when they hear security, what do you think of? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of security when it comes to computers? Like
stealing a bank account.
Yeah, so stealing information.
Yeah.
Maybe antivirus is something that people oftentimes think about.
Hackers, Snowden.
Right. Yes, Snowden. So there's a lot more to it than that, right? Obviously. So I'm going to kind of give you a whole bunch of stuff today, hopefully to get you thinking, but also to give you some resources so that you're not just left hanging. Because after some people hear my speech, they can't sleep for a while afterwards. But hopefully I'll give you some information and helpful guidance in that. My information, you can follow me on Twitter, find me on Facebook, or I have a website. It's currently down for maintenance, but it has a blog and I update stuff from time to time. These slides also, the last slide will give you information. They're on SlideShare, so you can download them later. You've all heard the saying, right? What you don't know can hurt you, right? So that's kind of what this whole talk's about today. And one of the things, this is an article that was just when I was starting to prepare for this, I was looking online, and the first article that popped up for me was, hey, awareness is the first step for small to medium-sized businesses. So how do they protect what they don't know is the issue, right? So the first thing that you want to understand in security is what are the risks related to it, right? And if you don't know what the risks are, you don't necessarily know what you can and can't do to protect those risks. Or, and this is a valid response, decide not to implement certain controls, right? Because the controls cost too much. So you have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Well, if you don't even know what the potentials are, how can you make the right decisions later on? And so I'm going to try and make that a little bit easier for you to do. But top news, the CEO of Target left voluntarily or was asked to resign, or you know how that goes, right? And this comes from a cybersecurity breach. So this is now the issue that CEOs are starting to deal with, because now it's front page news when some large retailer like Target gets hacked. Now if they get hacked, is there any hope for the small to medium-sized businesses? Well, the difference between the small businesses and the bigger businesses is the bigger businesses are known targets. And pun intended, I guess. They're known targets, right? People know that they have a lot of information like credit card numbers and stuff like that, so they're going to try and hit them. Small businesses may be easier to hit, but if they hit you, they're not going to get a big enough of a return. So sometimes hackers will avoid trying to go after small businesses or medium-sized businesses even, just because it's a waste of their time. They'd rather spend a lot more time trying to get Target, because this one hack was a big, huge payday. Right, so that's what they're looking for.
Well, how do they hack into it? I mean,
how do they hack it? Oh, and Target one is really an interesting one. So there's a thing that everybody should, in almost all the security guidelines, it says if you have an external third party come into your system, you should monitor them while they're in their system, and if they're not supposed to be in your system at a given time, that they're locked out. So if they call up and say, hey, I need to go and check your system, then your guys on your side would say, all right, we're going to turn it on so you can come in, and then when you're done, let us know and we're going to lock you back out. So they just can't in the middle of the night just decide, oh, I'm going to log into their network. And that's what happened here. And it had nothing to do with the financial system or anything like that. It was an air conditioning repair company that was connecting in to do maintenance on the systems that run the air conditioning. Now see, there's another issue there too, is that we've taken so many things that were typically not connected on the network and we've added them to the network, like our refrigeration units and all of that. One of our large clients, we do vulnerability scans for them, and they own nationwide stores. And everything's automated in it so that the central office will know if a meat cooler is running wrong, or it's not maintaining the temperature, or there's something wrong with the motor. They'll get a message across the network telling them that, you know, store XYZ has this cooler going out. They use that for maintenance, so it gives them a great cost benefit because they can monitor those types of things and send out repair crews before the staff even knows that there's a problem. The issue with that then is now this thing is on the network and becomes a potential vulnerability. And that's what the vulnerability was here. It was, Target was doing just about, well, in theory, was doing all the right things, but they missed one thing, and that one thing that they missed is how somebody got into it. So somebody got into the laptop of the air conditioner repair persons and then used that to get into the network.
Now, how do you, I thought when you use your credit card, they process the transaction and then it's deleted. There's no numbers, there's no nothing.
That is one way to process credit cards, but that's not the only way to process credit cards.
Well, I thought it was that's what they had to do, isn't it?
No, they don't have to do. It's highly recommended that they don't. But if you go to Amazon and you buy something, you can tell them to save your credit card, so next time you go there, you just pay for it and you don't have to retype it in. So then they have to store it, right? So that's an example of them storing it. Another example is if you do chargebacks. Have you ever gone to a store to do a return and they say, well, we have to credit it back to the same credit card that you put it in? Well, usually they still have it in the system, and then when you swipe, when you go back and you give them your receipt, sometimes they don't even ask you for the card. They said, do you want to put back on the same card? You say yes. They click a button, and then it goes back to that account. But they do keep it. There is a business reason in those two instances to keep it. Other companies keep it when they don't need to, and there's not a business reason. According to the PCI standards, which governs how credit cards are supposed to be handled, they're only allowed to keep it if they have a business reason for doing so. And if they do keep it, they're supposed to encrypt it. But that's only one way of it, right? Because credit card information just isn't just stored. Sometimes it's just transmitted across the wire. And sometimes all they do is eavesdrop on that wire and then catch the information as it goes. So you want to make sure it's encrypted when it's stored, encrypted while it's being sent. Those are all part of the things that most software is supposed to be doing these days. So what are some of the challenges that small businesses and medium-sized businesses face? One is knowledge of what the threats are. You don't know what they are. The fact that IT changes, or information technology changes so rapidly, right? We were just talking before about, people still are running Windows XP. Windows XP is 3 versions behind on the operating system and no longer supported. And it's over 10 years old. And it was the last operating system Microsoft made before security became an important part of the design process. So basically, you're running a Model T if you're still running Windows XP. And so you have to wonder, with all the vulnerabilities and them not going to support it anymore, there's a lot of issues that are potentially there. And some people still like that, right? But it changes. And you should probably, and I hate to say this, but you should expect a change every 3 years. I mean, that's how IT works. There's newer, better things, and nobody has a cell phone for 3 years anymore, right? You remember those big old Motorola ones that flipped, and everybody had those for like 5, 10 years, something like that? You don't have them for 5 to 10 years anymore. I mean, things are replaced within 3 years. And I doubt that phones are really meant to last longer than that. They want you to buy a new one, right? But, so what about requiring expert or some type of professional advice on how to do stuff, right? A lot of people are like, my business is widgets, or this type of sales. I don't have time to worry about all the security aspects of that. Finding a trusted advisor is sometimes difficult. Getting a true professional, not someone that's going to tell you, oh, you need to go to just this product, or you need to go to this product because this product's secure. If anyone tells you that a product is secure, a light should go on and you should say, really? Because as a professional, I would never tell you, this is the silver bullet that solves all the problems, because there isn't one, right? So you get a false sense of security thinking that, oh, if I switch to this operating system, or I switch to this web browser, then I'm somehow secure. They all have vulnerabilities. And they change constantly which one's the top one with the most amount of vulnerabilities. One year it's Firefox, next year it's Internet Explorer, next year it's Chrome, and it just keeps on changing back and forth. If you go back 10 years, you'll see it just back and forth, back and forth. So switching one doesn't necessarily solve your problem, right? What about additional costs, right? If you're a small business and you're running pretty close to the line, it maybe you think, wow, this is extra cost for me. And maybe it is, and maybe sometimes it's not. Maybe there's easy ways to do those things that don't cost a lot of money. Security and projects, problem with a lot of the security products and stuff that they have, they're all sized for enterprise and not small businesses. So if you go to try and buy something like a firewall or something, I think Cisco makes a great firewall. But if you have less than 500 users, it's a waste of money. I hate to say it, I mean, because it's a great product and all that stuff, and it certainly would solve the problem for a small business. Problem is a small business can't afford it. And so it doesn't really make sense for them to do it. Now, Cisco did buy another company that now has small to medium-sized business products that are getting up to the same level of quality that they have on the enterprise stuff. But everything else isn't quite there yet for all the other types of things like intrusion detection. There isn't even an intrusion detection software that I found that is made for small businesses. You can get desktop versions that kind of look for things, but nothing that's really a true intrusion detection or prevention system that's made for small businesses. And then balancing the customer needs and the business needs can be tricky too. And I'm not going to say, oh, you should just forget everything and just put all the security up, because that doesn't make sense. So my point that I want to make, and I think this is the biggest point, is don't think in terms of security, because then you're missing the whole point. Because what we're trying to do is think in terms of risk to your business. So what is the risk to your business if you use X product, or you use this service, or if you save your information in the cloud, or if you take credit cards? What's the risk to my business? That will help you decide whether you want to spend the money there or not to protect that, right? Because you're only going to have limited funds, so that's the way to look at it. Now, this is the way that people spend a lot of money to have professionals come in and tell them that. And then you have other people that come in and just say, oh, you need all these blinking lights in this room, we call it the server room, right? All these blinking lights, and that'll solve all your security problems. That's not the way to look at it. And the way to look at it is, what's the risk and how do I mitigate that risk? And you do that with everything else. You buy insurance for things, for your business, if you can't mitigate it, right? So there's things that you can do even on the cybersecurity side of things. And there is even cybersecurity insurance that you can now buy. So you can protect yourself from risk. Even if you don't necessarily know the risk, you can find insurance that may cover you for those things. So those are the kinds of things. So think in terms of the risk to your business, and just ask the question, what is the risk to my business if I store my information in the cloud? Well, the next question is, what kind of information? Is it customer information, right? And in California, we have a breach disclosure thing, so if a breach happens, you now have to inform all of those people that there was a breach. And if you don't have their contact information, then you have to put it in the press, right? So that's usually not a good thing to be in the press that way. I'm sure Target's not, I'm sure they lost some money out of the whole thing, but people still shop at Target, so Target's still going to be around. But some small businesses have gone out of business because of data breaches, just related to the fines, related to like credit card information. You can look it up on YouTube. There's a bunch of, it's a website that's all about small businesses and what they can do with stuff with credit card processing. And they had story after story after story of small businesses that they couldn't pay the fines related to the breaches they had with credit cards. And what kind of fines are we talking about? Like $10,000 a week type of fines. That's expensive. I mean, and that's what the published fine is. Your bank may say, oh, your small business will only be $5,000. Well, that's kind of expensive until you fix the problem and verify that you fixed the problem. So there's teeth to this too on the compliance side. So how much would it cost you if you did nothing, right? If I don't do anything and something actually did happen, someone breaks into my system, what would it cost my business? If I don't have a backup and the hard drive fails or the computer fails, how much is it going to cost me? How many man hours is it going to take to recreate all that data? Do I need all of that data in order to continue operations? So you have to ask those questions. I work for an accounting firm, and we do tax returns for clients, and we do thousands of them a year. If we lost all of them, we would have to re-enter all that stuff next year when they come to get their taxes done. So that would double the amount of time it takes us to do the tax return. And if it takes us 5 to 10 hours to do a tax return, now make that 20. So what little bit of profit that we did make, because we have to run really close to the line because there's a lot of those H&R blocks out there, right? You have to run really close to the line margin-wise. And so any loss means next year you're not making any money. It's a loss. And then the next year after that, then you can start making money again. So it can be expensive. So if you did nothing, what is the cost? Sometimes it's not that hard to figure out. How much would it cost if you do something? So if I buy this backup thing, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars per year. So if I buy this backup thing and it costs me $1,000 a year, is that cheaper than spending, on average 4 hours for 1,000 clients? Obviously the $1,000 is a lot cheaper, right? So now we've been able to make an actual risk-based decision. And that's the way to look at these cybersecurity types of threats, is to just figure out what the threat is, what would it cost if I do it, what would it cost if I don't do it, and am I money ahead in the end, right? And it's all about risk. This is what insurance people deal with what's the risk that this is going to happen? Well, hard drives fail, and generally they fail within 5 years. So if you have a hard drive that's more than 5 years old, it's probably going to fail, because they're not rated to go longer than 5 years. So when you buy servers, the big expensive computers, we buy the hard drives in them, and they tell them these are rated for 5 years. So in the life cycle, when you're planning your server and you plan to have it for more than 5 years, you're planning to replace all the drives within 5 years before it crashes. So we had one of our servers actually had like an array of disks, a bunch of disks. One of them failed. We pulled it out, put another one in, it rebuilt it, fine. Then the next one failed, we put another one, and then we replaced all the disks. Because as soon as one failed, it was right at the 5-year mark. It was like at 5 years and 3 months or something like that. Right? It was like, do they plan this out? Right? So to know those types of things and take care of them is really helpful for small businesses. So when you look at other types of things, what is the risk if you accept payment cards? Right? So that's your customer's information that you now have for a brief period of time. Now, most small businesses probably just have the swipe pin pad type of thing, not integrated into the computer system. It's usually just a phone cord that they plug into the wall. Most of those systems, you're not going to have a whole lot of risk related to them, because the bank has already probably replaced those recently with new ones that are what we call PCI compliant. In other words, ones that follow the rules and have the encryption and all that stuff. But part of being a small business owner, you want to make sure no one's tampered with that. And so there's a whole guide on how to check this thing to verify if people are tampering it. If you have a gas, yeah, the machine. So people will go in there and they'll tamper with the machine. There's a guide online. They'll show you pictures of ones that they found where somebody, an employee or something like that, decided, I can get the information if I can just put some type of device in here that reads all the information as the cards are being swiped. Then I'll take that information and I'll go sell it for drugs or whatever I'm going to do with it. Or sell for money or sell for drugs or whatever they're going to do with it.
What about those little cubes that you put
on your cell phones and stuff like that? Well, you're hard time to get into one of those to try and put anything in because they're so small.
But they're safe?
If they follow the guidelines, the PCI guidelines, then they are as safe can be.
And then, like, we use at work, authorized net.
Oh, authorized net, yeah.
Yeah, and so every year they take a test.
Right. Right, so they're doing the ongoing security awareness training that's required by PCI when you do that. So they're doing this stuff for you. So you're kind of outsourcing part of it, and they're helping you with that process when you use somebody like that, which is a good thing to do, by the way.
I don't understand the questions. I answer the best I can.
Well, there's a lot of things that cashiers should be doing, right? When they look at a card, when they swipe it on the screen, it should put what the name is right around the receipt. It should say what the name is of the person that it read off the mag strip.
Yeah.
The problem is if you then look at the card and the name doesn't match, then there's something wrong. So what people do is they'll take a credit card and they'll swipe somebody else's credit card and then put that mag information on that mag strip, and then they'll go and use that credit card. So it may say my name on it, but it's somebody else's information when I swipe it. That's why they always have them look at the back and type in the 3 last digits. It's things like that to prevent from that kind of fraud. So that's why they do it. But if the cashiers aren't taught to do that and they don't do it, then fraud increases. Actually, the card that they have here that they're showing you has what's called chip and pin. It's basically a smart card. You have to type in a pin number, and there's an encrypted information on this card that you can't get out unless you type the pin in. So this is to protect against stuff like that. In the United States, we haven't really adopted that yet, but in other countries like New Zealand, it's required.
Where's the pin number?
The pin number is in your head.
Oh, you have to tell them.
Right. So
Chip in the card.
Yeah,
the
but
credit
that
card
will
itself.
unencrypt what's on the card that will then give the information to the device to allow it to then send the transaction across the network. So there's things like that are doing it. So if you're a business that accepts them in any way, shape, or form, you accept one per year, you're required to do all these things that are in the PCI requirements. Most businesses don't know that. And when you sign the little agreement that you're going to process credit cards, you're signing your life away. Look in there, and you can go back and look at your agreements. One thing in that agreement says that you're going to be PCI DSS compliant. And then they probably don't tell you anything more about it than that, which is unfortunate. Your bank is supposed to be educating you on those things, like Authorize.net is doing for you, as you used as an example. If you fail to do it and the card holders lose any money, you're on the hook for that money. So whatever their losses are, you're on the hook for it. So, I mean, if someone goes and charges up everything, takes all the money out of their account, you're now, the merchant, whoever that is on the hook for it. Plus fines. And if you don't remediate it, in other words, fix whatever the problem was, they can say, you can't process credit cards anymore. So this isn't it's a legal thing in that it's a contractual agreement that you've signed over. I always say it's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules, and that's Visa, MasterCard, Discover Card, American Express. That's them. So this isn't a law that was passed by the United States or anything like that, but it's international and it's required if you're going to process with credit cards. So, and how are you going to do business if you don't have credit cards? So the PCI Security Standards Organization that manages all the standards for all this stuff has a website for merchants to help you with this, right? So they have little videos that you can watch. They can explain stuff to you. And they make it as easy as possible for people. And in addition to that, they have a special one just for small to medium-sized businesses. So they're thinking about the small businesses and what can we do to help them. And sometimes a little bit goes a long way, right? Like using those phone-based ones and stuff like that. Most of those are fairly secure. So using those instead of ones that are plugged into the side of a computer that's also connected to the internet, it's much more safe to use the other ones.
What about the ones that are hands-free, they're like cell phone technology?
Oh, like cell phone-based payments and stuff like that?
Well, it's a little credit card machine that's wireless.
Oh, like, yeah, those are fine too, yeah. They haven't gained a lot of popularity. I mean, a couple places have them, but most places don't. It uses near-field communication to communicate with the card. It's just, instead of reading it off the mag strip, it reads it from the card. Right? So it's not a whole lot different. What about social media? What are the risks related to social media? So if you're on social media or you're not on social media, however that may turn out, what's it going to be like for your business? There's a risk not being on social media for your business. You may be missing out on potential customers. The risk of being on there too, the risk is that people may be saying stuff about your business on social media, things like Yelp and stuff like that. If you're not paying attention to that, you may have a bad rep, and if you're not on top of it and dealing with it fast enough, it seems to compound itself. It's pretty much a known fact that if someone comes in, they read a Yelp review, and someone says, well, I like this restaurant, but you know, it wasn't that clean, then you'll see the next 20 posts are about how the restaurant wasn't that clean, because they thought about it because they read somebody else's review. Whereas normally, if they didn't see that, they probably wouldn't have commented on it.
So you need to go on there.
So you need to go on there, you need to address it. If you get the best thing to do is say, we're sorry that you had a bad experience, here's a free whatever, or whatever it is. You need, so that other people then, when they go and look at it, say, look, this person complained and they took care of it. Yes, people will take advantage of it, but I mean, that's just one of the things. But it's becoming so pervasive right now. Remember, 10 years ago, you used to get a letter and you're like, oh gosh, I get so much mail. And then you get an email and you're all excited about it because you actually got this new thing. And now it's you get 500 emails and you get a letter, you're more excited about getting a letter, right? How fast have we changed, right? And so there's a lot of integration with businesses into social media. There's a lot of things that a lot of businesses do to try and maximize that and get some money out of it. Which is basically the point of trying to use any of that kind of stuff. But the thing to remember about is you have an online profile, which is all the information about you or your business online. And it's what information's on Twitter, what information's on Yelp, what information's on Facebook, what information's on LinkedIn, what information's on people's personal blogs. That all becomes a part of your profile. Now, if you take all of that information, then then the sum total that's your reputation. Is it a favorable reputation or is it not a favorable reputation? Not knowing and just sticking your head in the ground and pretending like it doesn't exist is probably not a good idea. If you heard two people out in front of your business talking about how your business wasn't that good, wouldn't you go out there and say, well, no, let me explain myself, or, I'm sorry that you felt that way, let me make it right, right? You would do those types of things. Well, it's happening now, it's just not happening in the physical sense, it's happening in the virtual sense. So taking care of those things that we would have normally done there. And online reputation could really make or break places too. Sometimes bad press can be good press too, but that doesn't always happen. There was a lady that had a restaurant. She was on one of those TV shows where the cook comes in and then helps them, but she was a really crazy lady, and most people just completely disdained her. I mean, the things that people said online about this lady, about how mean she was and how it was just terrible stuff, right? Problem is that everybody wants to go and see this for themselves, so their sales actually went up after this. So bad reps sometimes can't, but it was so bad people wanted to go to see how bad it was. They just went to see, they didn't actually went to eat. Of course, she's probably laughing all the way to the bank too, right? And this goes at a personal level, this goes at a business level. This one just happened earlier this year. There was a nasty link on LinkedIn. Someone posted a rejection letter. It was kind of someone applied for a job, really nasty letter, and so they posted it on LinkedIn. So now on LinkedIn, everybody looks at this business as, I don't want to work for that place.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of be careful about what you do because it'll be on the internet. I mean, cops are getting used to that, right? You can't just go take the guy out behind the shed and beat him up anymore, right? Because somebody's got a cell phone, they're got a camera, and they're going to get it, and you're going to get in trouble, right? That's the one thing about technology is everybody now has a video camera. Well, unless you don't have a smartphone, but most people have smartphones, right? So not that everybody knows how to use them, but they have the potential to use them. If they can figure that out, they can. How many car crashes do you now see on YouTube and stuff like that? Because people have their cameras and they get it out and they get breaking news right then and there. What about social shopping? Kind of already talked about that. How about protecting your brand online? So there's websites dedicated to hating on certain companies. You look up any company name, any big company name, you look them up and say bad customer service or I hate them. You look that up, you'll find a website that's probably dedicated to hating them, whatever it is. And there's probably not a whole bunch that you can do about stuff like that, but you need to be aware of it. And if it gets really bad, you need to see if there's anything you can do about it. And especially things like Yelp, right? Because Yelp for everything. I go hiking from time to time, and now Yelp rates trails, right? I can go there and say, oh, I really like this trail, or I didn't like that trail. So it's not even just businesses. People are rating all kinds of stuff. What about social media and HR? A lot of HR people are starting to use this. This is a good thing for businesses usually because you can help vet out potentially bad employees. I mean, there's an issue about you hiring somebody that you should have known you shouldn't have hired, right? Negligent hiring. But there's also a thing about rights and privacy and stuff like that. So there's a line there you got to kind of follow. But if you know somebody was convicted of fraud or something like that, or is wanted in another country for questioning, is that somebody that you want to hire? And you probably want to know that before you hire somebody.
So they can ask you for your password? And
They were asking for that. I would probably turn it down.
yeah,
I'd tell them,
you can't legally ask.
well, right, I don't know. I don't know how that's played out in the courts yet. Whether or not they can get sued for hiring practices or something like that. I don't know how that works out. I know that they're asking for it. I know a lot of employees are telling them no. There's ways to get the information without having to do that. There's services that you can pay for that do background checks, and they will also check the social media. The bad thing about that, you have to take it with a grain of salt, and they usually will do a good job of telling you this. They'll say, oh, based upon all this posts, this is what we think. There's a lot of talk about drug and alcohol abuse, or there's this or that. And so they just rate you on these different categories, right? So you just have to be careful when you read those categories because people could post things on your profile on Facebook, and if you're not diligent about deleting it because they posted you in it or something like that, then you can end up with a bad reputation because your friends or your college buddies keep on posting that picture of you doing that cake stand,
Yeah.
right? So it's things like that you just kind of have to watch out for. So ramifications for that. Interesting book if you like to read. Ira Winkler wrote a book called Spies Among Us, and he talks about his job doing espionage in businesses. So he worked doing espionage for the CIA and stuff like that, but he also did it for businesses. And the things that people will do, they'll go on, spies will go on to your Facebook profile, learn about you to try and befriend you so that they can get information from you about where you work. This person, he relates a story he talked about at the RSA conference 2 years ago, talking about how a guy found out what kind of man that this woman was looking for. He became that man, because if you know what she's looking for, you know what to become. Became that man, became her fiance, so that he could get into the, I think it was a law firm that she worked for. So that once he invited her over to lunch, and he came a couple of times. Now he knew how the office was set up, and then he was able to break in, get the information he needed, and then he disappeared without a trace. Totally used her. She thought she was marrying this guy. He was the nicest guy in the world, everything that she had dreamed for, because you put all that stuff on the internet. So things like that can happen. But scammers will use this information too. They know that you wanted to find, when bin Laden got killed, they knew that everybody was going to be looking for video of it. So people would say that they had video of it, so you click on it, so you download spyware or antiviruses onto your machine, because there wasn't any video footage of it. So things like that. So look your business up online, or look your name up online. Like I did this is mine, this is a couple years ago. I looked at almost everybody that's on there, on that list, except for 2 of them, or maybe 3 of them, are not me, but the rest of them are related to me. I found information that I had spoke at something, like 10 years ago I spoke at something, and they still had it up as Don is speaking next week. I'm like, that was 10 years ago. Why is that still up there? My bio has changed quite drastically since then. But anyways, it's interesting to go and just look and see what's out there on you. And you can also set up alerts so that anytime your name shows up, it'll send you an email and tell you, oh, your name has shown up. I keep on getting the same one for my wife and my daughter, and it keeps on saying mugshots. And it's people with the same names as my daughter and as my wife in Florida or Alabama or something like that. Keep on getting these emails, and I keep on looking. It's the same mugshot. It's the same person, whoever they are. But anyways. What about people taking your intellectual property? If you have a blog or something, or your website, and you post information online that you've copywritten, that you want, because you're using that to get people to come to your business because you have the information. Like if I write something about a security blog and I'm telling them, hey, this is what you need to do for PCI, I don't want somebody else stealing it so that somebody else goes to their website. I made that content. I want people to come to me. Well, so a lot of people will take your content and go post it on your website, on their website. Sometimes they won't even link back to your website. Sometimes they do. I mean, it's kind of nice that they link back, but really it's just ask if you want to use it, because then I can give you parameters or something related to it. But there's this service here, Copyscape, will actually go out on the internet and look and see if anybody has been copying your stuff and posting it somewhere else. So it's interesting to search. A friend of mine, he does a lot of social media, blogging and stuff like that. And almost every week, somebody has stolen one of his articles and posted it on their websites. Almost every week. I mean, he does a blog post a day, so he's doing like 7+ a day or something like that. But it's really kind of disconcerting to think that people are just doing that, right and left. So someone can use what you post online against you too. Like if you tell them your office is going to be closed on a certain day, right? Then they can say, okay, that's the day nobody's going to be in the office. So if I'm going to break in, that'd be the day to do it, right? Now, hopefully you have alarm systems and all that kind of stuff, but if you don't, and they know you don't, they may take advantage of that. This one is an example of a family. They were tweeting their progress across the United States, and while they were gone, someone broke into their house. So what you say online can damage you, so you want to be careful about that. The risk of keeping customer information, if you keep too much customer information, now that oftentimes is a gold mine because you can use that information in the future to try and sell to them or try and get them into your store again or whatever. The problem is if you lose that information, someone else gets that information, now the customer is going to be very upset or perturbed at you, right? We oftentimes, a lot of companies, especially in the United States, we think we gathered this information, it's our information. In Europe, they look at it differently. That's not your information, that's their information, and they can decide what you can do with that information or not. So California, or U.S. laws versus European laws are kind of exact opposites of one another as far as who owns the information. In Europe, I own the information about me, even if you have it. In the United States, you own it because you collected it, you produced it, however you got it. So there's two different mentalities here at work and how they write the laws around that kind of figures. So, but there is some type of fiduciary or responsibility that we have when we have customer information to try and protect that so that they don't become victims of identity theft or something else. We typically call it personally identifiable information. So if you see that word out there, personally identifiable information, it's just their name plus an account number, their name plus a social security number, their name plus an address, their name plus an email address. Anything like that is personally identifiable information because it takes a person and links them to some other data about them. If you deal with any healthcare information, that has to be protected as well. There's a law for that, HIPAA. If you have financial information of other people, there's a law that protects that. It's called GLBA, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. That protects their information. There's certain things you have to do to protect it. Now, if you think about your site, your business, or yourself personally, who keeps data on you? Well, everybody keeps data on you. Social media sites have it, and usually you put it there. Corporations have information on you. Government has information on you. Different organizations, nonprofits and stuff may have information on you. Schools will have information on you, obviously. And the media may have information on you. So there's information on you everywhere. And there's a lot of it. And sometimes it's hard to figure out where all that information is. I typically do, if I do like a chamber meeting like this, they give me a list of all the people that are in the class. I go look them up before I come to class. And then I bring stuff to class about, like, here's a picture of you on your last vacation. They don't know who I am. And when I come to, the session and I'm showing them stuff like that, it sends a powerful message. Wow, there is a lot of information about there. If somebody just knows my name and where I work or my name and my phone number, what is all the information that they found out about me? So I obviously can't do it when I come to a place like this where I don't know who's going to show up, but it doesn't take much. You go to Google or Bing, you type in their name and start searching. There's all kinds of websites that will give you public record information. So you can get a lot of information about people. I recently had done one, and one of the persons in the class was a fugitive from another country who was wanted in regards to questioning about some financial irregularities about the company that that person was the executive at. So it's really, really interesting. Yeah, well, and I didn't bring that up in class. I'm obviously not going to say, oh, yeah, one of you, by the way, is wanted. But it's really interesting when, and actually the person came up to me after class, because I had not mentioned any of that information. I just said that I found out stuff. He came up to me after class and said, if there's people posting stuff about you online and it's a lie, how can you deal with it? And he wanted my services to help him deal with it. Well, if it's a lie, there's things we can do about it. But if it's the truth, then you're going to have to figure something else out, right? Anyways, things like this is like Google. I can go back to 2000 when I didn't set up my Google account until 2008. But if you go back to 2008, you go back to Google, it will tell you everything you've ever searched for. Everything you've ever searched for. If you were searching for how to get rid of a dead body, it's there, right? So, and the police know this, right? But hackers and criminals know this too. So if they get your username and password for Google, they can go in and they can just look for what you've been searching for. Now Google says they don't do anything with it. I don't know whether they do anything with it or not. They at least are willing to show you what information they have on you that you've searched for. You can tell them that you want to delete it, but is it really ever deleted? It's deleted from this interface that you look at, but it's probably still somewhere in their database. So and by the way, Google, that's how they make a lot of their money, is selling targeted ads and stuff like that. So a month ago, I saw these little Star Trek ships online. It was an ad, and I clicked on it because I wanted to see what they were, because I like Star Trek, right? So I get the Star Trek ad. Next thing you know, every website I go to has that same Star Trek ad on the website. Never seen it. Now I see it all the time. Like, oh, so they must have, this is all through the Google AdSense or something like that. Because I Googled it, they knew I was looking for something, and I hardly ever use Google because I don't like the fact that they track me like this. So I use Bing all the time. Plus, Bing pays me. I actually get paid to search for Bing. So I figure that if they're going to use my information, at least they should cut me in on the deal. But so I don't use them very often. So when I do use them, on accident or because I wasn't finding what I was looking for on Bing or something like that, all of a sudden all the ads I see on every website are related to it. So all I've been seeing for the last month and a half is, Star Trek information. I searched for hiking boots last week. Now all I find is hiking boot information. So it's like very limited in what it is. And I think 2 years ago, someone asked me to go do like photography for the wedding, so I was looking up some information about that. And all of a sudden all the ads were related to bridal shower stuff and all this stuff. And I'm like, why am I getting all this information? I'm not getting married. Anyways, it's because I was looking up photos or something. There's all kinds of other unexpected sources to check out. If you're a professional like I am, where you sort of have your own brand also. If you're like a CPA, you have your own brand. There's websites like Zoom Info that gather all this information they find on the internet, and they post it up there like LinkedIn, but without your consent. They just post it up there and say, this is what we found out about Don Hester. Well, it turns out a lot of that information wasn't about me. It was about some other Don Hester. So I had to go in there. You can claim your profile. I have to log into it and claim it. And there's a process you go through to claim it. And then you can say, this isn't me, this isn't me, this isn't me, and then you get it out of there. But there's like a whole other site that's putting information about you up there. So you want to watch out for that stuff. People can use it for identity theft and fraud. I don't want to go too long on these things because I think a lot of people are very familiar with identity theft and stuff like that. There's been a lot of commercials about it. This busboy is a guy who kind of started the whole thing, made a lot of money doing it too. Now, identity theft can happen because people break into your computer and get your information. They go dumpster diving and get your information. They can dumpster dive your business and get information about your customers that way if you throw it away. They can get it from data breach, like Target's data breach. There's all different types of ways that they can get this information, and then they can try to use that information. And if they can make $1 off of it, they're going to try to do it. If they can sell it for drugs, they'll try to do it. They'll do everything from ATM skimming of cards. It's like gas people put things in front of gas pumps, so when you put your card in, it copies your card mag strip, and then you buy your gas. Well, it also got your credit card number so somebody else can use it.
Can you tell? Because that's happened to my husband and I a few times when I know
Yeah.
it's from ATM. It's like, how can you tell if it's ATM?
You gotta look and I looked. I'm the weird guy, right? Because I'm always like looking at the pump before I pump. The pump one should look consistent with all the other pumps in the area. If you're at a gas station, if you go to the same gas station all the time, you should know what the pump looks like. And if it looks different, like there's something a little bit further sticking out than normal, then you'd be. I would be cautious. I wouldn't use it. In addition to it, nowadays they're actually breaking into the pump and putting something inside the pump to do the reading so that you don't even know that it's there.
So what about not even touching the pump or the ATM machine? Do they have like something that they can hold when you walk by that's going to read you? I heard there's something.
There are some things like that. If you have cards that have that capability on that, there are things like that and they have wallets that you can put your cards in for that. I haven't had a problem with that. I don't know that that's ever happened to me.
It's actually the machine something.
Yeah, it's usually a machine that's usually something, and there's a lot of videos out there how to look for it and stuff like that. But it's lock bumping. That's another thing. If you have a business, if you don't have the business grade locks and stuff like that, there's a key that people can get. They can put in there and they can bump it, and then it'll unlock your lock, as if the key was made for the lock. So you want to be careful about that. I just replaced all the locks on my house because it was an older house and we hadn't replaced them, and I got the bump-proof locks. It cost more, but I didn't want to chance it and stuff like that for break-ins and stuff like that. ATM cards, we talked about that, the skimming stuff. Where does skimming most of the time happen? Most of the time, merchant groups, restaurants are more likely to happen. Servers will take and put in their pockets or whatever little things so they can just scan the card, and then they'll go and scan it. Because how many times do you go to a restaurant, you give them their card, they go disappear, and then they come back with your card? What do they do with it while they were gone? You didn't see. I'm not trying to scare everybody, but I mean, some of them are, you know, will go and scan that information. They go turn that over to their drug dealer, and the drug dealer will say, okay, I'll give you X amount for so many card swipes. Right? So they have a big bonus for doing that kind of stuff, right? And guess what? California is the biggest place for that to happen. So restaurants in California, actually restaurants in Southern California is the biggest place. I don't know why not in Northern California.
It'd be known for something.
So what can you do? Should you go up and try to pay?
If you can go up and pay, I mean, I'm not really paranoid because they really are out to get you, because you're only paranoid if they're not really out to get you and you think they are. But you have to consider those types of things, and it's a risk type of thing. I stopped using my ATM card. I only use a credit card for everything. My ATM card is only used on very rare occasions. When I go to Costco or something like that, because they only take American Express. So I use it there. But everywhere else, I have a different credit card for online transactions, a credit card for normal day-to-day everything I do. That way, if it gets compromised with Target, my whole family, me, my wife, my daughter, my son, all of our cards to our bank accounts were all compromised with the Target thing. So we all had to have them replaced. And then they canceled all of the cards, sent us new cards, and it was 2 days before I had a card so that I can actually go and use. So we were using credit cards anyways at that point in time. So I guess that was the last straw for me, because I kind of was playing it on the edge. I was doing my risk analysis and I was saying, well, it hasn't happened to me yet, and it did. So now I switched. They sell this information on the black market. What about people spying on businesses? Chinese government's been caught a couple of times spying on businesses. So it's worth it to kind of take a look at it. They actually are putting stuff into irons. They're putting little wireless snooping devices in irons. You know, irons you iron your clothes? They found wireless transmitters that will try and find a wireless network, connect to that wireless network, and then get out to the internet and then pass information that it collects wirelessly from devices around it in an iron. Right. And that's not the only one. So everybody's like, oh, the NSA is spying on you. And I said, really? You didn't? That comes as a surprise to you? It's been in the news for quite some time. Even the one over there, the British intelligence agency, if you had a Yahoo chat account and you had a video camera, they could actually get into that video camera, watch you, without the video camera actually turning on and saying that it's even being used. And they were watching people to get information. So governments are doing this too, to businesses, to people. There's all kinds of different examples there. You can look at it. Sony did that when I don't know if you remember this. Sony used to have a thing where you order the disc. You put the disc in your computer and then put a rootkit on your machine so that they could stop you from copying that music. But it also left a giant hole in the backside of your computer that most people were unaware of. And this is a company. You expect them not to do these types of things, but they were doing it. So China's always hacking into Google and breaking into other people's accounts and stuff like this. There's all the other risks that you probably heard about, because I've tried to talk about things you probably haven't heard about. You probably heard about people stealing your devices and any information that's on there. You've heard about antivirus. You've heard about wireless networks and not doing backups. So I didn't really bother you with all that stuff today, but I wanted to give you some information on some other things that you may not run into, right? Here's an example. We talked about this just before class about you can put spyware on it and you can catch your cheating spouse. They sell software that spies on computers. Now, this is, of course, it's made for you to put on your computer. They give you all these warnings. You can only put it on your computer, you know, so you're not violating the law. And if anybody logs into your computer, anything they do on it, you capture everything they type. So if your spouse is cheating on you, you put this in there, and supposedly you'll be able to catch them doing all this stuff, right? Well, here's the thing. Who's to stop you from installing that on your boss's computer? Right? And it hides itself so you can't see that it's there. So these are the types of things. They put spyware on cell phones now. So even if your cell phone looks like it's not doing anything, they could be listening in on your conversations. And this is like 2020. This isn't like something that's, you know, I guess if you don't watch 2020 or 60 Minutes or stuff like that, you wouldn't catch these types of things, but there's other places.
Even if it's turned off?
Well, sometimes even if it's turned off, because it's not really ever off. Take the battery out, then yeah. Yeah, so you see that now on cop shows where they're chasing people or something like that. People take their batteries out of their phone, or they'll throw their phone on and crush it or something like that, because you can still be tracked even if it's off.
Huh.
Well, don't tell the criminals that though, right? The cops got to be able to catch them. So all these businesses, what are they all famous for? They've all had breaches, right? And it seems like it's not going to stop. And there's so many breaches that people are starting to get numb to the idea. It doesn't surprise them anymore. It doesn't have quite the big hit that it used to have, which is unfortunate because people like him, Albert Gonzalez, the problem, he's the guy that did the big one that was Marshalls and stuff like that. You know, the big one that was Marshalls a couple years back, TJ Maxx and all that kind of stuff. He's responsible for all those data breaches that are down there, him and a group of friends. So most of the largest data breaches related to this guy, or this guy had a part in them, and other people too. He got caught the first time. He decided to plead guilty for a reduced sentence if he would turn on his friends. He turned on his friends. They released him. Then he went back into crime, and that's when he did the bigger breach. So, people taking credit cards and doing, taking that information that they had got. And I think this one was related. Was this one related to Target? That might have been related to the Target breach. They were already making credit cards from the information that they got from it. 70% of that comes from external people outside your company. 48% of it is caused by something an insider inside your organization did. They didn't do something they should have done, or they gave information out that they shouldn't have given out. 11% said that a business partner was related to it, and 27%, because that doesn't add to 100% obviously, 27% of it is multiple, it's somebody outside and somebody inside type of things. We already kind of talked about data breaches. Here's an example of how many data breaches there are a year, how many records typically get lost. This information is as of February. I haven't updated it. So 2014 looks really small over there, but I guarantee you it's twice that. Oh, well, it's far more than twice that this year. And then you have hacktivists. People that are hacking you for a cause, whatever the reason is. So they hacked into BART so that BART couldn't turn off cell phone service in Northern California, which is like our subway type of system, I guess. They hacked into it so that they could, make their point, whatever that was at the time. So, and that could potentially put people's lives in danger. So things like that too. And if you get somebody who's got a bone to pick with your organization, they may hack into it just to pick that bone. So, all said and done, I want to give you something you can walk away with. There's a cybersecurity framework that the National Institute of Standards and Technology came up with at the President's request to give organizations kind of like the simplest type of, hey, this is what you need to do for security. So identify what you have, protect it, detect if something's happened, respond if something has happened, and then recover your business. Kind of makes sense. Now there's things underneath each one of those that you would follow. The guide is available on that website for free. In addition to that, the Small Business Administration has a website. They have a bunch of different articles. This is just one article about security tips for small businesses. So you're not completely out there alone. There's a lot of government information that's out there. And there's a whole bunch of other websites. Microsoft has a website dedicated to small businesses for security. Stop, Think, Connect is something that is a conglomeration of different federal agencies like the FBI, NSA, and stuff like that, working together to try and get information out about how to protect yourself personally and your business. And then they even have a small business learning center where there's a whole little video class that you could go through that will tell you some of this stuff. And then, of course, you can find my information, my blog, and all that kind of stuff as well. Here's my contact information, and these slides are already up on SlideShare. So if you go to SlideShare/SOBCA, you can find the slides for this and other presentations that I've done in the past. Any questions? Is it like a fire hose?
On the servers, you say those things last about 5 years?
The hard drives in them typically are...
Because I'm putting in a server now for our thing. We haven't transferred any information, and supposedly they got an automatic backup to
Right.
all the information. Now, does the backup go to, or just the, what am I looking for? What kind of exposure
So in that situation is, whoever you bought that from, I would ask them, okay, what is the suggested maintenance on this device, and how, and what's the expected life of this device. At the 5-year mark, I would then do a reevaluation of the device and determine, one, is it still performing, fast enough or whatever it is for it, and then replacing the hard drives. Hard drives individually are inexpensive, so you can get those for cheap. And probably 5 years from now, you probably buy, far more than a terabyte drives that are typically available today. Like if you go back 10 years ago, the big size of hard drives was, 500 gigs was a big deal, was a really big deal. I mean, most of them were like 20 gigs and stuff like that. Now we're talking about terabyte, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte drives when you're buying computers now. So you may just want to get a bigger drive later on. But if you're doing backups, then if the hard drive fails, then you're going to be able to recover. You need to make sure the backups are working though. Sometimes people put the backup tapes in and they never look, and they never, because the software will tell you the backup, we did a check on the backup and it worked. If it for whatever reason failed and you didn't check it, you just because we used to have an office, 20 years ago, when I first came into the firm, they were just taking the secretary was just taking the tapes out of the machine, putting another tape in, and then taking that tape home. And then she'd take the Monday tape out, put the Tuesday tape in, and she'd take the Wednesday tape in there. But for 6 months, the backups weren't running. But they were changing the tapes every day because they thought they were running.
How do you know?
The software will tell you. See, so you have to do more than just plug it in and take it out. The software sends like an alert message that says, hey, this backup didn't work. So if you logged onto the device, it should pop up and tell you that, or there's a log in there or something that tells you it's not working. What you do is if you find somebody an employee that has a little bit of technology experience and say, okay, this is what I want you to do every week. You log in here, let me know that it worked and you checked it and you're good to go. But because that way, at least if the hard drive fails, you at least haven't lost everything. Right?
I believe everything everybody tells.
Well, one of the articles that I read about small businesses said you should just have a zero trust policy, because just don't trust anything.
That makes sense.
Because if you don't have a professional that you can call that can sit with you like you would call a CPA if you're going to have advice about can I take this as a deduction or not, right? Or you would call an attorney if you're going to write a contract. Right, because it's very specific, it's very technical, there's a profession behind it. Problem is, we haven't really realized with technology flooding in that there is a profession behind it, and a lot of people don't know the difference between a professional and just a hack. Somebody who says, oh, I know everything about computers, look, I'm a whiz, I can do all this stuff. You're a whiz, but do you understand the business requirements that technology is supporting? Because that's the real key there. And if they don't do that, and I get really frustrated with it because I'll come into a place and someone will say, will you come and, they had a quote from somebody or somebody give them an idea, this is what we suggest you do. And then they call me and ask me, just look at what they proposed to us and let us know if this is in the ballpark. Is the price in the ballpark? Is what they're recommending standard for some other businesses like mine? And so we've done that a number of times where we've come in. And most of the time it's fairly decent, but sometimes people are just being taken to the bank. I mean, I'm like, no, you should not be paying that much for that device. That the MSRP, if you bought it off the shelf, is this. So they're charging you 3 times that amount. It shouldn't take but 3 or 4 hours to set the thing up. So what are they charging you for? You don't know, so they're just, you have sucker tattooed on your head or something, and so they say, we'll take advantage of those people. Anyway.
Crazy.